One of the primary responsibilities of government is the efficient use of the country's resources to advance the general welfare of the country and of everyone and Juana. To achieve this, the government prepares a budget or spending program for a year based on the available funds, primarily from the taxes earned and other sources of revenue. Constantly seeking ways to improve public service delivery, the Philippine government has introduced improvements in the way the budget is allocated, released, and presented over the past years. One of these key reforms is the cash budgeting system. It aims to address delays caused by piling of contracts, underspending, and challenges on the implementation capacity of agencies. On September 9, 2019, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte signed Executive Order No. 91, directing the national government to adopt the cash budgeting system effective January 1, 2019. This shift from the obligation-based budgeting system that was in place before to a cash budgeting system is a major policy reform. The shift aims primarily to ensure that the delivery of public goods and services is efficient and timely. Every government agency or office is provided with a budget for the entire year, based on the approved General Appropriations Act enacted by Congress and signed by the President. The GAA is the annual expenditure program of the national government and all of its instrumentalities. In the GAA, each agency is allotted with a budget for the year. This budget sets the limit on the amount of contractual obligations an agency can enter into. The validity of the GAA is only 1 year. Agencies are given January 1 to December 31 to spend their annual budget. At the end of the year, the authority of the agency to use their budget expires. Under the old system, it's enough for agencies to award contracts before the end of the year to save their budget appropriations from expiring. These contracts may be implemented in the succeeding year, and the funds will be provided to the agency to pay for these projects. This means that in an obligation-based budget, unfinished contracts are carried over to the next fiscal years. Thus, in the next fiscal years, agencies have to implement both these carried-over contracts as well as the projects funded by their current year's budget. This practice shows an apparent spike in contracts awarded by agencies in the last quarter of each year. This piling up of old contracts on top of the new ones has been hindering the efficient and timely implementation of projects. CBS is doing away with this practice. Under the CBS, it's not enough for agencies to award contracts before the year ends. The GAA for the year can only authorize the payment of projects up until the end of the year. This means that agencies need to make sure that projects are obligated and fully implemented before the budget expires at the end of the year. In CBS, payment for contractual obligations delivered by the year's end should be done within 3 months after the end of the year. This period from January 1 to March 31 of the succeeding year is called the extended payment period. During the EPP, agencies can pay for goods delivered and services rendered and accepted by December 31 of the previous year. Remember, the EPP is only for payment, not implementation of projects. By the end of the year, projects should be completed. By the end of the EPP, payment for completed projects should be done. Simple! But what happens if an agency cannot finish a project within the year? How does CBS account for unexpected delays in implementation? Continuing delayed projects beyond the end of the year can still be done in CBS, provided that the same projects is included in the succeeding year's budget of the agency. These projects are called spillover projects. Delayed projects may be implemented in the succeeding year as long as agencies had the foresight to include the funding requirements of its spillover projects in their budget proposals for the following year. Can agencies still implement multi-year projects in CBS? Yes! Multi-year projects are those with implementation periods that exceed 12 months. Just like the current practice, before starting the procurement of a multi-year locally funded project, an agency should get a multi-year contractual authority from the Department of Budget and Management. An MYCA is important because only the annual requirement of a locally funded project can be included in the agency's budget in the GAA. The MYCA is the document that contains the total cost of the multi-year project, which will be considered as the approved budget for the contract in procurement. With a budget crafted under the cash budgeting system, a government agency can better focus on implementing programs, activities, or projects within the fiscal year, from January to December, based on the GAA. Is it actually possible to finish projects within the year? Yes! The key to implementing projects on time is to plan them well and procure them ahead of time. Agencies may start procurement activities for their projects in the coming year once the President has submitted a proposed budget called the National Expenditure Program to Congress. According to the 1987 Constitution, the President is required to submit the proposed budget to the House of Representatives within 30 days from the opening of the regular session of Congress. This means that as early as July, agencies may start their early procurement activities. EPA includes posting of the procurement opportunity, if required, up to the recommendation of the Bids and Awards Committee to the head of the procuring entity as to the award of the contract for goods to be delivered, infrastructure projects to be implemented, and consulting services to be rendered in the following fiscal year. Award may only be done once the GAA becomes effective at the start of the new fiscal year. Early procurement allows agencies to start implementing projects as soon as the new year starts and when the GAA becomes effective. To prepare the agencies for the full implementation of the cash budgeting system, a transition period was designated covering fiscal years 2019 to 2021. During this transition period, agencies shall observe the approved timeframe for obligation, implementation, and payments of personnel services, maintenance and other operating expenses, and non-infrastructure capital outlays, and infrastructure capital outlays. This transition period should allow agencies to institute policy and process improvements in line with the CBS. The CBS is a continuation of the national government's commitment to further modernize its public financial management system. The success of the government's implementation of the CBS relies on the proper planning of programs and budgets, and in close coordination of the various units within an agency that plan and implement government projects. CBS also emphasizes cooperation among government agencies so that regulatory bottlenecks are streamlined. Through CBS, the government promises to deliver concrete results on the same year that the budget is enacted. We are full speed ahead to a more efficient government.